I would like to invite our next speaker, Dr. Rita Sharma. I would like to introduce her. Dr. Sharma is deeply inspired by the historic innovations that led to the domestication of modern day crop plants and is equally astonished by the fact that out of estimated 30,000 edible plant species on the earth, we human beings only cultivate about 150 of them, with more than 70% of our calories coming from only 15 crops. Further, more than 50% of these calories are contributed by only three cereal crops, namely rice, maize, and wheat. These choices, driven by a simpler need of feeding the increased population in the past, have to be revised in the wake of limiting resources, deteriorating environment, and changing nutritional requirements. With an overall aim to gain deeper insights into the evolution and domestication of agronomically important plants that led to modern day crops and facilitate de novo domestication for the development of multi-purpose climate ready smart crops for the future, her research leverages the synergism of plant biotechnology and computational biology to facilitate data driven precision agriculture. I'm very much excited to listen to Dr. Rita's talk. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for a very nice introduction. Let me just share my slides first.
Yes.
Okay, I believe my screen should be visible now.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible. It's in the slideshow mode. I think you're good to go.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, although I've been introduced more like a plant biotechnologist using computational biology, but I have prepared this presentation in a very generalized mode because I understand that the student participants here may not be just interested in the plant biotechnology per se, but would like to hear more about the scenario of computational biology in the country and how its impact is increasing over the time. So, yeah, so that's how I titled my presentation, that how the boundaries between biology and computational biology is shrinking in terms of education as well as research. So first, yeah. So just introducing first how my academic journey started. I have started my journey is a very pure subject, but botany from with masters in botanical sciences from Guru Nanak Dev University, and then I moved ahead to University of Delhi South Campus for my PhD program, and followed by postdoctoral research at University of California, Davis. And I returned back to India in 2014 as a Ramalinga Swami Fellow in Jawaharlal Nehru University School of Life Sciences. And in between, I also went back to UC Berkeley and Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratories in United States for a visiting scientist fellowship program. And throughout this journey, which I call as a formal training that helped me establish my own research group, I was challenged with high throughput data, which was generated from high throughput technologies. So may it be the first experiment I was supposed to do in my PhD was microarrays, and then SAGE experiments involving sequencing of thousands of bases, and then followed by computational comparative genomic studies, where we could make sense of the data that we had got using high throughput technologies. And during my postdoc also, I was involved in switchgrass and foxglove genome sequencing projects. And then we thought of making databases to make it available to the public community and make resources for others also to use. So this is how I transitioned from a botanist to a molecular biologist to a computational biologist. And considering that exposure that I had over the time, I was appointed as assistant professor in the UGC Recharge program in Jawaharlal Nehru University in the School of Computational and Integrative Sciences. We call it as Computational and Integrative Sciences because it's a very, very unique department in the sense that it has faculty who are coming from very different disciplines. There are physics, there are chemists, there are biologists, and they all integrate their domain expertise with the computational sciences to make sense of the big data that we were generating in our groups. And in terms of education in JNU, this department hosts a postgraduate diploma in big data analytics, which was just started a few years ago. And then we had an MTech program from 2006 to 2015, which was discontinued. And then later we started master's program, MSc in computational biology, as well as PhD, where we have computational biology and complex systems. So these programs were some of the programs which were the sort of, made the inception of the computational biology in the country. And we continuously revised those curriculum to make room for the growing needs. And right now I'm at VIT Pilani. I joined here last year. And in here we have a very single interdisciplinary sort of department called biological sciences with 20 faculty members, all with diverse expertise. And the boundary between bioinformatics, computational biology, and biology has totally blurred because all of us use computational sciences as a tool sort of to complement the science that we do. And that's how we identify ourselves, some of us who actually use computer science tools, as computational biologists and not bioinformaticians. Because if we start thinking about differentiating between the two, you would see varied definitions available on different sources on internet, and it is not possible for every one of us to agree with one particular definition. But the one which was given by Russ Altman at Stanford University in a blog that he wrote impressed me the most, and which connects with where I feel connected, is that computational biology is the study of the biology where you are using computational techniques. So you are essentially a biologist who is using computational techniques to assist the research. So it is more about exploratory science, discovery science, and we are using computers as just one of the tools, just like we do experiments. Whereas bioinformatics is more towards creation of the tools, where tools are created to help the biological problems. So they are created for the computational biology. So for example, there could be certain tools which are available, which are designed by a bioinformatician, but I may be the user of those to solve my own particular research problem. So I would call that person maybe as a bioinformatician and myself as a computational biologist. Although these, again, definitions are blurring with the people coming with the interdisciplinary knowledge of the domain. So anyone who has a domain knowledge of biology, statistics, mathematics, and computer science can do either into bioinformatics and computational biologists, or even both. You don't have to be one of them. But how bioinformaticians were perceived decades ago was more of people who would technically help computational biologists, or in general biologists, to achieve their research goals. So they used to work like mostly as technical posts where they would develop tools for the biologists. But that changed as we entered into the era of sequencing and high throughput technologies. So even if you see the human genome sequencing project, and most of you might already know Eric Lander, who was the lead scientist who led the human genome sequencing project from MIT and Harvard, he was basically a mathematician and a molecular biologist. He did not have any degree in computer science, and he was the one who led the human genome sequencing project. But he had some very good scientists who identified themselves as bioinformatician to provide the support for assembly and making sense of the data which was being generated by the sequencer. So, and those people changed the scenario how we look at bioinformaticians versus computational biologists, because they started joining hands together to lead the projects together instead of one working for the other person. So this is just to show you some of the lead bioinformaticians who have gone up to the extent of leading some very huge international projects. As far as Indian context is concerned, in India, more systematic investigation of bioinformatics and education started with the inception of the BTIS network, which was established by Department of Biotechnology in 1980s. Before that, there were some people who were doing by self-learning mode some of the bioinformatics things, but there was not a formal training available for bioinformatics. So in 1986, with the establishment of BTIS network, there were DICs which were established. So basically in BTIS network, this is still existing and very much functional, and is the source of connecting bioinformatics in the country, where we have several distributed information centers, bioinformatics facility centers, which have high performance and super computing facilities available. There are 7 centers of excellence which are running the programs in masters and PG programs for bioinformatics. There are distributed information subcenters, which also include Northeastern State Facility Centers, which together make a very strong foundation for the bioinformatics in the country. So there are 7 centers of excellence, there are 11 DICs, 51 sub-DICs, and 98 bioinformatics infrastructure facilities. So you can imagine that we are really quite well-resourced to lead bioinformatics project. And some of the universities which were the ones who actually took the initiative, the first ones to start the bioinformatics in the country were Pune University, JNU, Calcutta, Pondicherry, and Madurai Kamraj University. And still those programs are very well designed to meet the needs. And they're all uniformly distributed across the country so that the students would have access to these centers wherever they are located. But there has been, in spite of all these bioinformatics resources, training centers, we still had the gap that students after completing these programs are not getting jobs in the industry. So what was that gap that has to be fulfilled between the academic curriculum and the industry requirements? So there has been, the people who were leading the committees in the bioinformatics boards and BTIS centers, they thought about it, that what is missing, that is not letting our students get the good jobs in industry. And after a lot of thought and all, for last couple of years now, DBT has come up with association with LSSDC, some skill development programs, as earlier speaker was also mentioning, where they have a 6-month certification program, where the 6-month or 1-year certification programs have been started in several national repute institutes, where students are they go through the curriculum which is designed in consultation with the industry, so the industry needs are met. And these certificate courses and all can be finished after your completion of the formal degree, and that can help you to have more formal education as per the industry requirements. So usually they have some component which is theoretical courses which are done as per the standard curriculum, followed by some dissertation or outdoor project which preferably has to be done in industry, so that you get a real exposure to the industry problems, and then eventually you can apply that. So this is one step that DBT has taken to help students bridge that gap and get jobs in industry. And Professor Alok Bhattacharya, who was earlier at School of Life Sciences, JNU, he's retired now, but now still very active man. He is the one who is chairing this PTIS network and has made significant contribution in comparative genomic studies with, especially with microbial genomes, mycobacteria, and so on. And then I also put the picture of my PhD supervisor, Professor Akhilesh Tyagi from University of Delhi South Campus, who was among the first people who took initiative for getting involved into international projects involving genome sequencing. So that was where the challenge started to come, that we needed to have teams who can come together to meet those deadline-oriented projects. So Professor Tyagi was involved in first rice genome sequencing, then he took up into tomato genome sequencing, and then desi chickpea when he was director of NIPGR. So these are the people who actually took, those were not computer scientists by training, they were actually life scientists, they were biologists who took the initiative, made the teams, constructed the teams, and led those projects which were heavily computational biology oriented. And but these are few people who had taken that stance. Not everybody can lead the projects at that level. So still there were people who were calling themselves as bioinformaticians and would still just like to call themselves as biologists, and then how to bring them together and initiate collaboration. So there has been several initiatives to do that also. And now DBT has started the more of national network projects where the people who are actually not bioinformaticians or computational biologists, but would like to take help of bioinformaticians and computational biologists for integrated national level projects. There are now calls for proposals where they can together propose bigger network projects to help them collaborate with each other. And some of the very beautiful examples in our country where this network projects have been very successful is the National Mango Database, where a lot of institutes came together to develop a mango database, being one of the most important fruit crop in our country. Then we have Indie Genomes project, which is completed by led by the researchers at IGIB and ECSAR with other, I think 16 or 17 different institutes together to sequence more than 1,000 Indian human genomes so that you could have a representation of the Indian genomes as well. And they have constructed a database to make it freely available for others to do and extend this research. There has also been initiative by National Mission on Education through ICT, where they have come up with the VIT Portal, where researchers can actually register themselves with their expertise. And then using that expertise, these databases are searchable. So if you search bioinformatician or computational biologist, you will know how many bioinformatics people are working in the country, so that if you want looking for a collaboration, you would get them domain wise as well as geographically wise, where they are located, how many of them are in central universities, state universities, private universities, so that you can find the right fit for collaboration. You don't have to just depend on your local network. You can go to this database and you can find out closest to you who are the bioinformaticians, computational biologists who might be accessible, and you would like to connect with them to initiate collaboration. So I just did a quick search before this talk, and there are about more than 400 bioinformaticians and more than 1,600 computational biologists who are registered in this portal and hopefully available for collaborative initiatives. There are student groups also who are taking initiatives to connect with each other. International Society of Computational Biology has a regional student group format where the students can come together to make a regional group of any country. So there is RSG India, there is RSG US, Australia, Sri Lanka, and so on. So these student groups, they come together and then they network and they organize events. So we have an RSG India team who is very active. I'm faculty advisor for them. And they have been doing certain events to bring together students and invite experts based on the needs of the students whom they feel they would like to listen to. And you can also network amongst each other to talk about what kind of research you are doing with each other. So I encourage the students to go and check the RSG India website and the events which they are organizing. Also, we don't have to just network in between the country. We also have to work with international levels. So there are challenges why India is it is now expanding and growing. So we have to have our place at the international forum also in computational biology and bioinformatics. And for that also, there are several initiatives which have been started. And one of them is where I was also one of the PIs when I was at JNU, is the research training group, which is mostly focused on big data research. That is an initiative between DBT and Heidelberg, Germany, for a combined graduate degree. So the idea is that the students in the participating institutes from India will go to Germany for a few months, get a training there, and then they would have a joint degree by the host institute as well as the Heidelberg host partner. So there are institutes like JNU, IIT Madras, IIT Kanpur, IIT Guwahati who are participating in this, and some of the students have already completed their training in Heidelberg for the making this program a reality. So these are some very wonderful programs that students, if they are aware, can take advantage of. Also, in terms of computing infrastructure, you might have heard about the first supercomputers being installed in IIT Delhi, but now we have several institutes of eminence, universities where the supercomputers have been installed and are in the process, so that the dream of having a national supercomputing mission can be accomplished over the years in the future, so that won't be a limit for us to think of ambitious projects. Also, there are people who are taking initiatives to bring the science in India on international forum. One of those examples is APBN Society. It's the Asia Pacific Bioinformatics Interaction and Networking Society, which is registered in Delhi. And some of the faculty at JNU and Calcutta, Boston University, and Assam University, and so on, are the founding members who came together. They're all bioinformaticians, computational biologists. I'm also one of them. We and then made this society where we can organize international conferences. The first international conference was organized in 2018 in Perth, and hopefully there'll be more which will place the Indian bioinformaticians and computational biologists on the international forum, where we can talk to each other, discuss our science, and then initiate international collaborations. And now, as I said, I identify myself as a computational biologist, but the computational biologist doesn't mean that, it's a different stream. Slowly, the gap between computational biology and biology is also minimizing. A lot of students, when they come, they say, I'm not good at computer, so I just want to do wet lab experiments. But I tell them that that's not going to sustain you, because slowly in biology also we are moving from single gene to genome level, from single RNA to transcriptomes, from single protein to proteomes, from one metabolite to metabolome. So science is transforming very, very fast. And the way the technology is becoming so cheap, it is so cheap to study at genome level. Why would you look at just one gene when you can actually look at the whole genome? So, and then because of this, the integration of all these would require quantitative skills, mathematical skills, and computation skills. So if you want to really survive in biology, you will see that slowly these two are actually merging together to make one stream. All computational biology and biology is going to be the same. If you are doing biology, you can't say that I cannot use computers, because computers have now just become one tool in the arsenal of the biologist, not a separate science anymore. And at BITS Pilani, we have students who are doing BTech in mechanical engineering, in chemical engineering, computer science, and so on. And they come to us and then they talk to our biological projects and they apply their knowledge, whether it is engineering, computer science, and they do short-term projects where they to combine those disciplines together to come up with the innovative solutions. And that is how, I think where BITS Pilani leads and innovates, because it is combining together. It is not looking at these streams as separate streams. The students from any stream can go to faculty of any stream and then do the projects with them. And that is the beauty of interdisciplinary nature of science, where you can combine the knowledge together. Now, there's just the last one thing I would like to share about that. As I said, a lot of us are generating a lot of data. In my lab also, I generate a lot of transcriptomics data, and I had handled proteomics, metabolomics projects over the time. But what happens is that a lot of labs who generate this data, either they will submit it to some international repositories, if that too is mandatory by the journal. So when you are publishing a paper, some journals mandate that you have to submit to a national repository. And in those cases, you are bound to submit. But if it is not required, you may not submit. And if it is not published, then obviously most of the people won't submit and make it publicly available. So that makes a huge gap that, the Indian funding agencies are funding these huge projects, and then the data stays in one lab, stuck in one computer, and then it is never accessible to others. And so it is important for us to be able to access at least the data which is generated from Indian cultivars, Indian varieties, Indian strains, Indian populations. And so with that vision in mind, DBT has initiated an Indian Biological Data Center, which is being hosted at RCB Faridabad, and it is having clusters together at Bhubaneswar, NIC, and RCB. And Dr. Saurav Raghuvanshi, who also played a very instrumental role in rice genome sequencing project with Professor Akhilesh Tyagi at Delhi University, is leading this initiative, where they are trying to make an Indian database for all the different type of biological data that we generate in India using the public funding, and so that would be accessible by Indian researchers. And the idea is that whether the data is coming from agriculture, livestock, microbes, humans, doesn't matter. Anything which is being generated in India should be put into one database, and that it should be searchable and it should be available to the community for use and expand and build on that research. Right now, they're running the pilot project and they are working on mostly nucleotide database, but they have a plan to work on different domains where, domain specifically, there will be different domains for different types of data in this database, and that will be accessible to the community. As far as my lab is concerned, as I have already been introduced, I am a plant biotechnologist and I'm mostly interested in crop improvement. And for that, we usually start with selection of some of the lines, some of the seeds that we want to start with. And ultimately, we want to make an improved crop out of it, right? But then the work that goes in between, from selecting the germplasm to having an improved crop, is tremendous, because you have, when you talk about a genome, you have thousands of genes and you don't know which one should be, edited to get an improved crop. And you cannot edit those thousands of genes, because as far as editing and transformation in plants is concerned, we are very, very limited in terms of technology. It takes about 6 months to 1 year to be able to have some validated transgenic lines for single gene. So this is not even possible for us to even think of characterizing thousands of genes. And this is where computational biology has always come very handy in my own research, where we use high throughput technologies to generate data at genome scale, and then use other tools like phylogenomics combined with the pathway mapping and all to shortlist the candidates, which are can then be again brought into the lab for precise editing, either using genome editing tools or the other conventional tools to improve the crop plants. So this is how my research is being also benefited as a competition with the computational biology. And by just accepting that computational biology is not a different science, it is one of my tools, and if I want to make progress, I have to learn. I think anyone can make change, and that takes your research at a very different level. So with that take home lesson, I think I'll just stop here and let the host take over, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So are there any questions? You can please put them in the chat box. And also thank you so much, ma'am. The way you beautifully explained how computational biology and biology are merged together has helped me a lot to make this community understand as well. Because as a community manager, I keep on getting questions from biotechnology students who say, how to get started with computational biology, or why shall we do it, or how to do it. They're scared maybe. And we keep on asking such questions because they are just confused. So your talk has definitely given such students a direction that the knowledge of computational tools is definitely very important to excel in these times. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
And also the information that you gave about these groups, it was very much helpful. Okay, so I have a question. What is the skill that is most needed in bioinformatics for a student? What do you think?
See, I can't pinpoint one, because that depends, as I said, on your research question, right? So I know students who don't even know programming, but they are still able to handle data with the publicly available platforms like Galaxy, where you don't have to really write the programs. So, and there are certain areas where you have to write a program because there is nothing available. So it totally depends on the kind of research area you are working on and what resources are available for that particular system. If you are working on a model system, you probably would have a lot of information and you may not have to go back, and people would have already developed programs and algorithms to help you, and databases which might be available. But if you're working in a challenging new system, then you have to again start from scratch. So I think it totally depends on what you are working on. But what I would say is that I don't think there is anything that can limit. Starting from scratch just makes you confident enough that you can do it again if required, right?
Yes, ma'am. I completely agree with you. The next question is there a demand for computational biologists in agriculture in India?
Of course, there is a lot of demand. See, when you look at the demand, you would see that a lot of opportunities, they come in the projects which are mostly related to human genomes and microbial genomes, because of the amount of funding which goes in the medical sciences, health informatics. The data which is generated in animal sciences is usually much higher folds compared to plant sciences, because the amount of funding that goes in plant sciences is not equivalent to what goes in health research. So usually when we talk about big data, the big data usually comes from the human resources. So that's why you see most of the employment opportunities staggered towards those projects which are focused. If you're talking about last 2 years, a lot of funding has gone into COVID related research, which makes sense and is a sensible approach. But in case of plants, although we are not generating the data at the scale where human and microbial genomes are being sequenced and data is getting accumulated, but that does not mean that there is not enough requirement, because although We are not sequencing thousands of genomes, but then people in agricultural sciences, because of the lack of funding, are very, very selective. And the kind of polymorphism, the kind of variation which is present in the plant genomes is much more daunting. Assembling a human genome would, I guess, would be easier than assembling a complex polyploid plant genome. It takes years. I worked with switchgrass genome sequencing, and it took us 10 years from beginning to it is a allopolyploid, which means it has 2 genomes and it's a huge genome. And just coming up with the complete assembly was more than 10-year project. So there are a lot of daunting and challenging projects which are available in agriculture as well. And as we are heading towards understanding the requirements in agricultural sciences, these projects are going to increase over the time, especially with the directive that has come yesterday from Indian government, where now CRISPR edited crops are not going to be assessed for safety requirements. A lot of people would now try to put their foot into this area to be able to generate improved crops. And again, as I said, for generating improved crops, you have to take help of computational biology. So of course, as I said, the demand is there and it is increasing over the time. And we would love to have some very good, bioinformatics students coming and joining our group and contributing in the research.
Thank you, ma'am. And the next question is, what would be an acceptable level of education required for one to get a job in bioinformatics? What do you think?
In bioinformatics, when you talk about job, there are jobs at different levels. So that also depends whether you're looking for a job in industry or academia, whether you want to go into a technical team, you want to join as a research analyst, you want to join as a data scientist. Minimum requirements would actually again depend on the job, the kind of job, and the growth opportunities available in that particular area. So I don't think there's a single answer to that question as well. I'm sorry.
Right, ma'am. And Habiba is asking, does one need to know how to code to use bioinformatics tools, and which is the best language, R or Python?
R and Python, I think both are really important for any student to excel in bioinformatics, because I don't think they're as complicated as C++ and all, Java and all. If you are the starter, a beginner, there are certain things where R is more helpful compared to Python, and there are certain things where Python. So I would suggest you to do both, at least R and Python. And they're not very difficult languages. And once you understand them, probably there is nothing much that you cannot do without having to know other languages. So, but yes, these two I think are equally important.
Right, ma'am. Just one last question. Is there a repository for accessing agricultural omics data from India?
The Indian databases, so far, as I said, are either individual centric, like for example, the Mango database, which is only for mango. And then we have this rice IRGSP database, Genome India Initiative, which is for accessing the rice database. And similarly for chickpea. So depending upon the crop plant, either there are individual crop databases, but there is no one single repository for all the plant genomes, especially for the varieties which have been sequenced in India. And this Indian Biological Database Initiative, DBT, is the one which is going to fill this gap in coming years. Otherwise, if you look at the global way, then Phytosome is one repository where you would find the plant genome sequences which have been initiated by the Joint Genome Institute in USA. By far as I know, that is the biggest repository for accessing the plant genome data specifically. But that does not go only with the plant Indian varieties. That's the varieties which have been chosen to sequence. But those are not just limited to varieties which are in United States. There are some Indian varieties also which are there in their pool, and they also have pan genomes for certain crop species. So I think for now that will be a useful repository for you if you're working on plants. But over the time, hopefully the IBDC would also have this information from the genomes which are being sequenced in India.
That's quite interesting. Thank you so much, ma'am,